I have a story for you, told to me by my uncle just 2 days ago when I was visiting him at his home for Christmas in rural, almost bluegrass country. I'm an occasional The Truth Is Here reader, and as a city slicker I was curious to ask my uncle and two cousins, all avid outdoorsmen and ex-military, if they had ever seen anything spooky or that they couldn't explain logically while out in the woods fishing, hunting, hiking, screwing around, etc. As for my cousins, disappointingly, neither one of them had any spooky stories. They told me about being startled or creeped out a few times by the calls of vixens and mountain lions, but nothing unexplained. My uncle agreed, nothing unexplained, but he did have a really creepy story to contribute that I thought belonged here. While I'm positive I won't be able to tell it anywhere near as good as my uncle did, he's a fantastic storyteller. I'll do my best. Furthermore, I want to be clear that this is a true story. And while my uncle is delightful to listen to, he is not known to exaggerate or lie. He has lived a life interesting enough that he has no reason to. I'll tell it in first person, but remember this is coming from my uncle who is in his late 60s. In late winter, maybe spring, 1968, I was in my last semester at the US Air Force Academy in Colorado, on my way to Vietnam as fast as I could get there. By that point I was getting bored, and I was really looking forward to graduating. And I took advantage of the increased leash we get as near graduates. A couple of times a week, I would drive up to a spot I found by the Snake River and fished for a couple of hours in the afternoons. One Wednesday, I get to the spot around 2, parked the Jeep pretty close to the bank, and got to fly fishing. A few hours went by and I had caught a couple dinky cutthroats. So I built myself a fire on the riverbank to cook them up for supper before rolling back to school by 9. I was sitting there by the fire, finishing up my second trout. Except for the river, it was quiet. I was by myself. I didn't see anything unusual, but this feeling of dread started to settle in, like something was wrong or something bad was about to happen. I couldn't put my finger on what I felt, but I was almost sick to my stomach. I decided to stay alert and see if the feeling would pass. If it didn't, I knew I had a little .38 revolver on the passenger seat of the Jeep, just in case. A fishing gun, you know. I kept picking at my trout, mostly listening for anything moving in the trees. A few minutes went by and the sick feeling was sticking around. In fact, it got worse. I thought maybe I'd sense a cat stalking a white-tailed deer. They had mountain lions up there, and those bastards are dead silent on their feet. So I knew just because I didn't hear or see anything, it didn't mean it wasn't there. I got up, slowly, casually got the .38 out of the Jeep and loaded it. I sat back down by the fire and put the .38 on my lap. I finished my trout and hustled to pack up, and I finally got myself out of there. 2 days later, Friday, I went back up to the spot to get some fishing in around noontime. I fished for hours. I think I caught 3 cutthroat that day. I was on the riverbank already frying up the fish when a game warden pulled up. I thought, oh no, they've got me now. You see, I hadn't bought a fishing license. I was going to be graduating and leaving, and I just didn't bother getting one. Now here's the game warden about to ask for my license, and I don't have one. I thought maybe I could turn on the charm and maybe he'd not give me a ticket, or let me go with a warning. He parked behind my Jeep and walked over. I said, "Hey there, I've got a cutthroat here. Would you like to join us?" "Hello, don't mind if I do." I chatted him up, but I think he could tell I was tense. I thought things were going well. He's here and he's eating the evidence. "Are you from around here?" he asked. "No sir, upstate, Buffalo, New York. I'm down at the academy, graduating in May. Do you mind if I take a look at your ID?" "Sure can," I said, and I handed him my student ID card. He handed it back, he looked out on the river and looked back at me instead. "You get up here much?" "Sure, whenever I can. I've been up here a couple days a week for a while. I was up here on Wednesday." His eyes, sort of, sharpened up and he frowned looking at me. "Wednesday? Same spot?" "Yes sir, same spot. I've gotten lucky with the cutthroat here." "Say, around what time do you think?" he asked. "Oh, I was here a while. I left around 4 or 5. I creeped myself out, tell you the truth. I kinda booked it out of here." 4 or 5, you say? Did you notice anything funny? See anything strange?" "No sir, I didn't see anything, but I got a bad feeling and I had to run." He goes on to tell me, right around 6 o'clock on Wednesday, a game warden right on the other side of the river from where we were sitting had found a dead body, freshly dead. They reckoned it had just happened. The man's ankles were bound and his hands were tied behind his back, and he was shot through the back of the head. He was bent like he was on his knees, like someone executed him. I never heard what happened after that, or what the outcome of that was. but this being 1968 outside Colorado Springs, I think that was an early drug trafficking hit. I think that's when people first started bringing large quantities of drugs through that area, so that's a story I've settled on after all these years. I think I must have heard or seen something that tipped me off, and I must have somehow perceived it when the body was being dumped. I didn't see anything that jumped out, but I think I must have felt it in my subconscious. I suspect that if I hadn't taken out the .38 and set it on my lap, something bad would have happened to me, and now I always buy a fishing license.